Thank you so much for your warm welcome. It's awesome to be here. It's super cool, just the time we live in where we can give talks from Phoenix to Germany. Really neat. So anyways, I'll jump right into the talk. So this talk is about increasing developer productivity by a factor of n. We'll see if it's actually a factor of n or not with NX, and more than just a monorepo. And the prevailing theme for this talk is fire, which is meant to represent passion and just that feeling of resonance that comes to developers when they're working with a really good tool set. And we'll see this kind of play out through the structure. So something about the talk structure. We'll start with my story with NX. And then we'll go into a section on what exactly is NX and just like a 10,000 foot view. And then we'll dive into some specific components and specific tools that NX enables for you and that you get with NX. And finally, we'll go into a section on empowering developers, empowering the community to be n times more efficient. So just to set some expectations on what this talk is and isn't, this is very much, what is NX? What are our motivations for NX? What are we trying to accomplish? And how are we trying to accomplish that? And it's not going to be so much going into the nitty gritty, but I think Myra's talk coming up later, maybe getting into some of that a little bit with the end-to-end testing. And also we've got a lot of content available from Narwhal. We've got step-by-step tutorials, full courses, all that kind of stuff that I'll link to at the end of this talk. So jumping right in to my story with NX. I love this picture. This guy is silly. But anyways, my story, I entered the business professionally in 2015. I had been doing other work, managing people until then, and decided to go back to school and learn computer science. And I got my degree, started my first job building IVRs in Java. And if you don't know what an IVR is, when you call up to like your bank or to your cable company or your internet service provider or something like that, and you hit the automated system, that's what an IVR is. So I was building those. I was building web portals for the people in charge of them to administrate them. And the frameworks we were using and the languages we were using, it was just the prevailing characteristic of everything was friction. It felt like I was fighting my tools instead of my tools helping me. And so I think most of my time was really spent on like, fighting with buggy frameworks and trying to understand like how do Java pagelets or serverlets really work and stuff like that. So I just knew there had to be something better out there. And lo and behold, September 2016 comes along and Angular 2 drops, and it was a big deal. Jeff Cross and Victor Savkin, the Narwhal founders, were actually on the Angular team at the time. And for whatever reason, our company had contracted to build one of our web portals in Angular for one of our contracts. And I said, I volunteer. I really want to see if this is really, if this tool set is what it looks like it is, which looks like a much better world where I'm actually focused on my problems rather than focused on the tools. And so the project was a success, and I was validated in some way that there was something better out there. And this kind of started a spark for something in me that was like, okay, this is the reason. Like all my work up to this point was like, maybe I chose the wrong thing. Like I'm not worried about creation. I'm worried about like weird configuration and all this stuff. And that's not what I signed up for. So being able to see in Angular that there's something there, that was super encouraging. So we had built a lot of cool stuff in the last project. It seems like we could reuse it. There's a bunch of other projects going on in our company at the time, and they're all doing the same stuff at some bottom layer. Like there's only so many things you can do in an admin portal, I think, at least for the stuff we were doing. And there's inconsistent quality, styling, theming, versions even across all of our different projects, and even frameworks across all of our different stuff. So it felt like we were just, every time we had the new task, we were just rebuilding the world. And so we happened to see Victor and Jeff do a talk on NX at the time, and we decided, let's go into this. So I was put in charge of a team. We started to work on a new company product, all while building up an NX workspace, all with like all the different libs and like libs as modules, so nice modules we were building for each possible feature we would want inside of our our admin portals. And we built a whole bunch of common libraries while building the product. And the crowning achievement of all this was a project that came in that a client needed. Normally it would take us, at least 3 months, maybe more to get all that stuff ready for the web app. We actually ended up building it all in less than a week just by reusing all of the stuff we had built before. And this was like, things were starting to come together. That spark had like lit into a blaze. And I was like, yeah, I was super encouraged by all this and seeing the increase in productivity that we had seen as a team, just as an organization. And so then I stepped into the next chapter of my life, which was I got hired by Narwhal. So I've been doing all this cool stuff with NX and happened to be following them on Twitter, and they tweeted out that they were hiring. So I jumped in. So now my job is consulting. I go to a bunch of companies and work with them for a few months usually, and show them how to use NX or help them with some of their harder problems. It's very cool for like cross-pollination across different companies, and to see also how people are using NX every day. And it's not just me doing this, but all of the sort of Narwhal engineers who comprise an awesome team. Everyone I work with at Narwhal is awesome, and most of the people I work at with companies are awesome. And also, there's a level of exposure that comes with this too, just from being exposed to all these larger companies, how they work, how they're doing their stuff, and the problems that come along with that. And this creates this really cool kind of like unbroken chain of like each of these builds into the other things, and we take all of that and we use it to we put it back into NX so that we can build better tools that are better suited for all the stuff we're trying to do. And this is where like the fire is blazing. So I'm really enjoying my time, and I think this kind of parallels in some ways the path NX takes. So what is NX? The 10,000 foot view. So like with my story, Angular drops onto the scene. And when it drops onto the scene, it brings with it this really neat web of like a framework, like more than a framework, a tool set maybe, and a workspace. So when you use ngNew, you're creating with the Angular CLI, like everything's integrated with Git already. You have your unit testing already set up and your end-to-end testing set up with Protractor. So one of the first cool features you get with NX. Oops, I did the wrong thing. Sorry. Let's do that again. Yeah, there we go. One of the cool things you get with NX is you can swap out Karma for Jest if you want. You can swap out Protractor for Cypress, which is really cool. It's really just taking the stuff that Angular gave you and adding some more like drawers into your workspace. That we'll see in a second. But another thing NX gives you, which is really neat, is support for other frameworks. So you can see there's also NX support for React, and which is not super interesting because we're in a Angular meetup, dang it. But what is interesting is there's support for Nest.js and Node, which is really neat in terms of being able to stand up your backend that you're using for your front end app in the same workspace, and being able to stand all these up at the same time and run some Cypress suites against it is really cool. We also bring in some additional tooling that you don't really find in Angular with our Storybook plugin, which lets you kind of take a component library or a set of components and just stand them up in isolation. And we also have some integrations between Storybook and Cypress that'll let you test, for your simple components. Is everything working as expected? So all very neat tools. And then you drop in all of the community plugins that other people have done to support their backend frameworks or their front end frameworks, because they really like the tools that Angular and later NX bring you in terms of like builders and schematics and all this stuff. So that's kind of the landscape of NX and kind of what NX is trying to do and what's trying to give to you. So next I have this video here, and this is taken from Toy Story 2, which I was watching with my kids, but I saw it as like, yes, this is what I wanted to do. So the context for this clip is this man here, the old man we see is an engineer. He's got a very niche engineering tool set, but you'll see he arrives with his little toolbox, and think of the toolbox sort of as NX. And yeah, he's comes here and he's kind of like, I'm here to build the feature. And this guy's maybe like the project manager who's like very excited to see him arrive. So the engineer comes and he's got his tool set that he's built. It seems like, you know, he's in a very niche engineering field, repairing toys. However, that's a thing. But he's got his tool set that he's built over like years of, you know, working with his very custom work, to the point, and it's so well engineered and designed for him, to the point where as you see him working, it doesn't seem like he is working against the tools, or even like the tools are there almost. It's like the tools are some extension of him, and the way he's focused on his work. And right here, this shot right here, where he's kind of intently focused. He's even got the glasses tool on his face right now, but it's all the look on his face is just pure engagement with the subject that he's looking at. So in many ways, that's kind of, you know, what NX is setting out to do, is to be a tool set that maybe you don't have to build yourself, that rather we can just kind of give you and say, hey, this is the benefit of years of work that a lot of, you know, developers have done. We found that this is the way that you know, work seems to be done best. And if you look at his toolbox here, it's got all the different drawers. Each one of those drawers represents some body of work, but a tool that is specifically designed for the purposes of, you know, the work that's being done. So you'll see here, he's kind of going through the work kind of like we would with a feature, fixing a bunch of things that have nothing to do with it first. Like he's just here to fix the arm. But he's setting out to do his work now, fixing the arm and you know, getting that stuff done. And yeah, putting on some last touches, maybe going through like you would with a PR, making sure everything's cleaned up, deleting the comments that are left in there. And then he puts his work up on the shelf. It's ready there. It's submitted. There's the PR. So that's all done. And at the end here, there's this look of satisfaction on his face, like, job well done. We did it. Like this is what we're trying to get to as engineers. Is this feeling of, you know, I'm just focused on my work, and I'm very happy when it's done. Like I don't struggle with my tools anyway. So anyways, some basic scaffolding philosophy around NX, making sure all your tools work together. So this means unified dependencies. In our world, this is like the one package JSON for all the things. And for other languages, this could mean, you know, for Java, you know, you have the one version of your dependencies for Maven, for example. And the other piece of the philosophy is apps and libs. So an application would be something that you build or you serve. And the idea is that your applications are really just containers for other libraries. So NX is specifically set up so you can create libs, which is going to hold actually like the different features and the different logic that you're looking to work on. And we have all these tools for isolating those libraries at a time via like the Storybook plugin to be able to focus on one thing at a time, sort of like the way the man had the doll set up, almost like it was in a barber shop when he was doing the different stuff. So getting into the components of NX, when you work with NX, you go through some basic steps to set up your workspace. So first you run a script to create the workspace. That just looks like this: npx create NX workspace. It's going to come in very much like ngNew. You're going to come in and create a workspace, and it'll ask you some things about, you know, what you want your namespace to be, what you want your starting framework to be, stuff like that. And then you go in and install plugins. So like with the man with his toolbox there, a plugin is like a new drawer that you could put into his toolbox. So for us, we'd definitely be using the Angular plugins, for example. But if we wanted to have a Nest.js backend, we could also run something like npm install @narwhal/nest.js. And then what that does is it installs all the builders and all the schematics that we would use, same way Angular uses them to create components or libraries or apps. And you could do the same thing with Nest. And you can do the same, a similar thing with any of the frameworks that have support for them. And then you run your code generation, which just looks like schematics, and you run your build targets, which, just like in Angular, you would run nxserve for my app or something along those lines. And then step 5 is you just benefit. Like it's all gravy from there. So NX core components. The first 2 are ones where we're probably already familiar with, schematics and builders. These are stuff that Angular brought in that we're kind of just building more on top of. So the next big tool that we have is the dependency graph, which we'll take a look at shortly. And also the next big step is computational caching, which is kind of like creating histories of the builders you've run in the past against source code. We'll take a look at that too. And also the NX console, previously called the Angular console, if you're familiar with that. So the dependency graph, if you ever run inside of an NX workspace, you run the command nx depth graph. You start a local server that when you open it up in Chrome, it looks like this, which is a sort of like a diagram of all of your libs, which are sort of the circles or the ovals here, and all of your apps, which are the rectangles, and how all these things work together and how the web looks, which is super, which is a huge boon to most of what we tend to see out there in the world, which is like maybe during the planning of an application, you'll see the architect will come out and like jot down on a napkin or on a whiteboard, this is how the dependencies should look. And usually that's never actually true. And sometimes it is, but it usually doesn't, even when it is true, it doesn't stay true. By running this command, you have like on-demand access to actual accurate information on what your workspace looks like in terms of all of your local dependencies and how that web looks, which is great just for being able to visualize. But there's an additional benefit to the dependency graph, which is being able to run affected commands. So in this example, it's the same web as we were looking at before, but I've made a change inside of this front end auth module. I think I just added a console log. But the idea is, because we made a change in this, NX is going to be integrated with Git to be able to see, okay, there's been a change to this library. Let's go and see what all could possibly be affected by this. So if you trace up the tree, you'll see all of the apps here that could be affected by this one change are lit up in pink. And the way that's going to work for us when we're running our commands, if we use the NX affected command, we can run NX affected test here, which is going to determine which libraries or projects could possibly have been affected by this. And we're only going to run our test target against those projects, which could be a huge benefit to you as a developer if you're not sure, oh, which things could possibly be broken by this change I made. You don't have to think about that anymore. You can just know, okay, I've got this NX affected test. I can press a button to run that and make sure everything's still passing. And also for your CI pipelines, this could potentially save a lot of time in terms of getting things to being checked off earlier. And this will work with building and end-to-end tests and linting as well. So super helpful there. Taking this to the next step, though, we bring in the idea of computational caching. So the first kind of layer of this is local caching, which is, as I run a command, in this case, I have an application called to-dos that I'm going to run build on. It's a pretty small application. It only takes about 3 seconds to build. You'll see here's the timestamp. If I go and I happen to, for whatever reason, run this again, what's going to happen is NX is going to see, oh, well, he hasn't changed, the developer hasn't changed any source code, but they've already rerun the build command here. So I already know what that's going to look like. So I'm actually just going to pull that out of our cache, which is indexed by some hash of the source code. And we're just going to just replay that result. So we'll take the console that was generated. This is an exact match. You can see the timestamp matches up. And the artifact that this generated is also put where it would have been generated in the dist folder. So what this means is really, if you ever, you would never have to rerun the same builder on the same source code, at least in the context of your local machine. And this is where the next step comes in, which is the distributed computational cache, which NX has a product for available now called NX Cloud, which is the idea for this is when you run a builder, just out of the box, NX will use a local cache for being able to skip some commands. But the distributed, our distributed offering here in the product will allow all of the network of people you work with, your CI pipelines, all these things to actually share one cache out in the cloud. Which will mean, for CI pipelines, if you've already run the unit tests on your machine with a given source code, it won't need to rerun it. Or the opposite way too. If CI pipelines have already run against some source code, it will know to skip it. And there's also some really neat tools that come with this. This is on the left-hand side of the screen here is our GitHub plugin that will let you see all of the different builders that are run inside of a pipeline, and it'll give you some report on how, these are all successes, and you'll be able to click in and actually see inside of our NX Cloud app what the output was. And this is super helpful in terms of working with teams where you just want to send a link where maybe, hey, I can't figure out why this unit test failed. Normally that would require, okay, I gotta go pull down your branch and run the test and remember what that CLI command was to run the test for this lib, and then maybe I'll see the same thing, maybe not. This will kind of set everyone on the same path. So rather than that 10-minute process I just described, it'll just be a link click, and then you can see right here. You can kind of share. This is what I'm having problems with. So really neat tools for that. The next tool I'm going to show in this one is the NX console plugin. You'll see this is our VS Code plugin. We also have some stuff we're working on for WebStorm, but I don't know if that's all the way done yet. But you'll see when I click into the plugin, I've sort of got these. It's like a GUI representation of what all the things the CLI offers. So I think we'll go in and we'll click on generate. And when we do that, we'll see this drop-down list that comes up in VS Code. And this will show us all the different schematics that we have access to based on the plugins we have installed. So you'll see there's a lot of the Narwhal ones there, but there's also the native Angular ones there as well. And when you click into one, you can actually see these are all the potential options you could use on that schematic, which is super helpful in terms of discovery. If you're not actually sure, I know I don't have them in my mind. What are all the options for generating an Angular lib? This will show you what each one of them is, as well as their descriptions. And so it will give you like this nice form control for being able to find out what all the different options are. In addition to that, we have this pane for our common commands. So you'll see we'll just run affected libs here. And when we click on that, it's actually going to open this portal or this terminal that's actually going to run it. And you can copy that stuff, which is nice as a developer if you do like using CLIs. So you can use this just as discovery if you like. It's going to tell us, which libs are affected. And finally, we have this projects pane at the bottom, which is going to list out all the different projects. Imagine that dependency graph, all the different nodes on that, and they all have their own builders they can run. So you can find, okay, what are the different builders I have? For this one, I actually have the custom one, Serve with API, that I built for this project. But you'll see, oops, if we click on the test and the play button there, we'll actually go and run this in the terminal as well. And we'll see, this is a side project of mine, so I don't have any unit tests, so they fail, but they do run. So that's the important part. So yeah, the big things you get from the NX console, like we said, discoverability. There's convenience. It's very nice to work with these things and not have to hold them in your head. You're not fighting against your tools. You're not having to bring up documentation or go to Angular.io again to find out what's that CLI command or that option. And also just for preference. I personally prefer working with CLIs, but it's kind of nice for some people, I think, to have that GUI thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like just using a CLI in itself doesn't make you any more productive, I think. So anyways, last little section of the talk is about empowering developers and empowering the community. And so a lot of this just goes into sort of the human element of what it means to be a developer. So I have the saying, I like to say, human is the most important OS. And what I mean by that is just like, in some way, we need to understand our own machine, like what it takes to be a human, what it takes about our science and our psychology and all these things, to be able and be able to maybe not hack that, but maybe to leverage that enough to make ourselves more efficient and better developers. And one of the big ways, this will go a lot back to that one clip. One of the big ways is using tools. Like this is, I think, if you look at evolution, this is really what separates us from a lot of other animals. It's just being able to use tools and use them effectively and go through that iteration process of finding a tool that happens to work, but then iterating on it, making it better. And being able to get all of those for free from NX, sort of working on this and giving it to you. To me, that seems like a really good investment to make. So that's kind of my pitch there. But also just being engaged and being engaged in the right things, like the work you're setting out to do. Like you don't want to be wasting your time on, oh, how does Webpack work again? Or I really want to set up Jest, but that will probably take a while. Like I'll have to figure out how all that works and fight it for a little bit. And also just enjoying your work. And I think that speaks to it too. If you can bring in a tool set that is going to remove a lot of that friction or a lot of that tedium from you, so you can focus on the things you want to work on, I think that's a huge piece of, leveraging what it is about who you are as a human and the chemicals and all that stuff going on in your brain to make sure you're being your most productive, and your team's being their most productive. I think that's a big piece of everything. Another thing is taking advantage of the time we're in. So open source software is really cool to think about in terms of just sharing resources. Like for the context of the old man there, in my story I made for him up in my head, he's spending his whole career building this tool set that works just perfectly for him. And unless he has an apprentice, a lot of that knowledge is going to go away with him. It took him a long time of his career, several years, I would imagine, to get the workspace to where he wants it to be. One of the cool things about open source software is we can openly share that with people, and it actually benefits us as Narwhal to share that with more people, because the more people who get their hands on it and they hit their eyes on it and can tell us, hey, I really like this, or hey, I really don't like that. Or they can think, hey, I really like it, but it needs an extra drawer right here. And you can write that yourself and submit it to us, or keep it to yourself if you prefer that way. But yeah, it's really cool to think about that, and just the resource sharing that comes with that. And also just expanding the scope of everything via this age of global communication we're in. Like, for goodness sakes, I'm in Phoenix right now. I'm talking to a bunch of Germans. This is awesome. And being able to see sort of the problems that y'all are experiencing in the problems you're having, and being able to bring that into our tool set and to bring that into NX and to see, okay, there's this problem that's been encountered. Maybe we can make a better tool for that. And also just the connected dev community. I think this goes hand in hand with the global communication. But rather than kind of holding on to our secrets or like hiding them away, I think we do a lot better as a network where we're sharing the work and the benefits we've gotten. So this all speaks to I think an iterative process of, if we want to become n times more effective than we were in years past, I think these are all different keys to doing that. And I think NX is doing a really good job at leveraging all those things. So the thing about Fire is that it spreads. So if this talk got you interested in NX and some of the different things that you can do with it, we've got step-by-step tutorials available on nx.dev. There's a lot of cool content available on nx.dev, really. And there's also a free course that you can get at nxplaybook.com. I think Yuri is actually working, another engineer at Narwhal, is working on an egghead course that will be much more robust. But for a lot of the stuff you can do in terms of like setting up a workspace and all the nitty-gritties of that, I think our free course is very sufficient for that. So you can check that out if you like. We also have regular NX office hours. Me and Brandon Roberts from Narwhal host those. So if you ever come across like an idea or a question or a problem, when working with NX, you can always stop by to those. These are on YouTube. I think we're trying to do most Mondays. So, and you can follow our Twitter to find out announcements for when they are. And there's also the NX community Slack. There's a link for this also on nx.dev if you go looking for it. And you can always answer questions here, and we'll check these periodically to make sure if there's any big questions that come up, we can address them here. And finally, if you really like everything about this and you want to contribute to it more, we also have docs on nx.dev on how to build your own plugin for, usually what these are is just a collection of schematics and builders. And there's some other plugins that do some interesting stuff like versioning for releases, like semantic versioning, and other interesting things. I think there's a Docker plugin as well that does some interesting integrations with Docker. And Google Cloud Functions, for example. So really neat stuff there. And if you have cool ideas, we want them. So please help contribute to the fire. So yeah, make sure you check out nx.dev and NX Cloud. Really good products from Narwhal. And if you like me, here's my information. You can follow me on Twitter. And I also have my Twitch channel where I'll do some live streams. Lately, I've been doing a lot more conversations, and it's been really fun just talking with people. But we'll occasionally live code, and whenever I code, NX is inevitably involved because I just love NX. So you can always join me on there. And that's it. That's the end of my talk. That's awesome. I love that.